Caroline, obviously, as the WA president of the Liberal Party, you don't like what you're seeing, but these things have an inevitability about them. And once the talk starts, it's very hard to stop. Do you think there's any realistic prospect next week at these 2 or 3 meetings, I've lost count of how many they're going to have, that the Liberal Party can come up with a realistic approach to net zero, get themselves back together and keep the coalition on track?
Well, I think that is in everyone's best interest, and everyone needs to get in that room or multiple rooms next week, whichever it is, and nut out a position. And I've already said this week, not everyone is going to get everything that they want. And John Howard, masterfully said that politics is the art of compromise. There is probably going to have to be a little bit of that here, but we need to get to a position. And the one point that Jane Hume did make this afternoon was, it is unusual for everything to come up for review after an election. You generally retain your policies until such time as you change them. So I think, that step was probably taken in the sense of being consultative and knowing that the party had to do something significant to improve itself. But I have a feeling that the unintended consequence of that was to be a bit destabilising. So I'm obviously a state president and I look after an organisation and membership and that sort of thing. But it does make this sort of job much more difficult when there is uncertainty on that sort of position. So all I would say to our federal parliamentarians is, everyone get in a room together, work it out and get on with it.
Joe, it's quite amazing when you consider the number of things that the coalition could be attacking Labor on instead of having this internal fight, with only one more week of sitting to go for the year. I mean, you look at things like electricity prices haven't come down, inflation's starting to go up, unemployment's going up. We didn't have a rate cut this week. Figures and facts out today about how many extra public servants federally that the Albanese government's hired. There's just so many things that if you had a sensible group of people on that front bench to attack Labor on, and Labor would be vulnerable to some of those attacks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, mate. And I think this is Labor's Achilles heel, which is that as the coalition is imploding, and it is imploding, and it is much like, as I wrote earlier this week, a suicide bomber. But of course, the whole point of suicide bombers is that they take other people with them. And the danger for Labor is that it thinks that just because they are so useless and incompetent that it doesn't really have to worry about stuff. And I think that the rising power prices, which fueled that higher than expected inflation rate, which in turn deprived punters of a cup day rate cut, that is the sort of thing that if it continues to grow, and there are signs that maybe it might be abating a bit, but if power prices continue to go up and to fuel inflation and therefore to deprive homeowners of their long expected rate cut or cuts, and potentially even, God help us, a rate rise, that's a real danger for the government.
Caroline, you're in the magnificent city of Perth. You probably don't have the issue that Melbourne and Sydney, we're certainly not as big an issue as Melbourne and Sydney has with housing, but the Grattan Institute, which is a left-leaning lobby group, as we know, they came out today or this week and said we should allow 3-storey buildings to be allowed on any residential block in any suburb anywhere in Australia. I'm not sure that if I was living in a single house on a single block, I'd be all that happy with a 6 or 3-storey apartment block being built right next to me and me not having any right to actually complain about it.
Well, maybe you need to consider another floor then. Look, I think we do need to have sensible infill. I think that is something that we do need to consider. And while our housing problem here in WA may not be as significant in the eastern states, we are taking a lot of political prisoners, though, or political refugees, I should say, from the eastern states. So there are plenty of people coming to WA, and obviously in and around AUKUS we need a lot of housing. So I don't know if that proposal in its entirety is perfect, but it's having the conversation that needs to be had around sensible infill and around the fact that we do need we do need more houses, and people want to live close to their families, you know, so that there is something, you know, it does need to be considered. There's a lot of tax, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulation all around building that impacts productivity, and that also adds to the huge amount of delay in addition to the cost. So I think it's a conversation in the right direction, even though the proposal's probably not bang on in itself.
Just briefly, you're our royal expert. Has Andrew Windsor got any chance of turning up in the US to answer questions? Zero, I would have thought.
Gosh, I tell you what, this has just gone from ugly to uglier to ugliest. And look, you know, I wouldn't have thought so either, but it is very interesting the way that he has been cut adrift from the royal family. And I do just get this sense, Steve, that the royal family were getting in front of something. And I don't know exactly what they're getting in front of, but I feel like there is definitely more to come here. Whether that includes an appearance by Andrew, formerly the Prince, in front of Congress, I don't know, but I think there is something coming.
Joe, I was amazed at these figures today. Hospitality in our city of Melbourne is just facing really tough conditions. But look at this. I mean, the rising costs, and obviously COVID didn't help anybody, but ASIC data showed that the number of businesses that have gone bust have gone from 202 in 2022 to 723 hospo businesses gone broke this year. That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. And again, it just sort of puts the lie to this idea that people had, that you could just sort of stop the economy and then restart it again and everything would go back to normal. That was never going to happen. As a lot of people shouted from the rooftops. And
Just makes me...
It makes your blood boil, doesn't it?
Just makes you feel so sorry for all of the people who try so hard in hospitality. Caroline and Joe, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'll see you next week.